Welcome back, everyone, to Stories That Shouldn't Be Told. In today's episode, I'm sharing a true, terrifying story about a quiet neighborhood and the man who never stopped watching from the truck. Every story is a warning. Some people don't knock, they wait. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share it with anyone who loves a good scare. And let me know in the comments, what are your favorite types of horror stories? Your support keeps the stories coming. Now, let's begin. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but after what happened, I can't shake the feeling that someone needs to hear it. My name is Margaret, and I've been living in the same neighborhood for 37 years. I know every family, every dog, every routine on Maple Street. Last spring, a young woman named Sarah moved into the blue house at the end of our block. She was in her early 20s, worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and drove a modest silver Honda. Sarah seemed like the perfect neighbor, quiet, polite, always waved when she saw me watering my roses. About 2 months after she moved in, I started noticing a man visiting her regularly. He was older, maybe 45, and drove an expensive black pickup truck. At first, I assumed he was her boyfriend, or maybe a relative. He'd park in her driveway, stay for a few hours, then leave. Nothing unusual about that. But then, I began to notice the pattern. He came by every Tuesday and Friday evening, always at exactly 7:30. He'd sit in his truck for several minutes before going to her door, scanning the street like he was checking to see who was watching. Something about his behavior made me uncomfortable. One evening while I was bringing in my mail, I saw Sarah hurrying to her car. She looked upset, constantly glancing over her shoulder. The man's truck was parked across the street, engine running. When Sarah drove away, he followed her immediately. That's when I knew something was wrong. I started paying closer attention. The man began showing up at odd hours, early morning when Sarah left for work, late at night after she'd gone to bed. He'd park a few houses down and just sit there, watching her house. Once, I saw him walking around her backyard with a flashlight. I debated whether to call the police or talk to Sarah directly. My husband thought I was being paranoid, but my instincts screamed that this wasn't normal. Then came the night that confirmed my worst fears. It was around 2 in the morning when I heard glass breaking. I looked out my bedroom window and saw the man's silhouette in Sarah's kitchen. Her car wasn't in the driveway. She was working a night shift. I immediately called 911. The police arrived within minutes, but the man was gone. They found Sarah's back door had been pried open and several items were missing from her bedroom, personal things like photographs and clothing. When Sarah came home the next morning, she was devastated. That's when she told me the truth. The man was her ex-boyfriend, Derek. They dated for 6 months before she realized he was controlling and possessive. When she broke up with him, he refused to accept it. He'd been stalking her for weeks before she moved to our neighborhood, which is why she'd relocated in the first place. Sarah thought moving would solve the problem, but Derek had somehow tracked her down. The regular visits weren't social calls. He'd been manipulating her, threatening to hurt himself if she didn't see him. She'd been too scared and embarrassed to tell anyone. The police issued a restraining order, but it didn't stop Derek. If anything, it made him more desperate. He started leaving disturbing notes on her car, sending flowers to her workplace, and calling her hospital, pretending to be a patient just to hear her voice. The final incident happened 3 weeks later. Sarah had been staying with her sister, hoping Derek would lose interest. But when she came back to collect some belongings, he was waiting inside her house. This time, he wasn't alone. I was in my garden when I heard Sarah screaming. Derek had brought a friend, another unstable man who shared his twisted obsession with controlling women. They'd been planning something horrible, but Sarah's screams alerted the entire neighborhood. By the time the police arrived, several neighbors had surrounded the house. Derek and his accomplice were arrested, and Sarah was rushed to the hospital. She survived, but barely. The doctors said if we hadn't intervened when we did, the outcome would have been much different. Sarah moved away permanently after that. She sent me a letter thanking me for paying attention when everyone else looked the other way. She said that knowing someone cared enough to notice probably saved her life. Derek was sentenced to 8 years in prison for stalking, breaking and entering, and attempted assault. His accomplice got 5 years, but the real lesson here is that we all need to trust our instincts and look out for each other. If you see something that doesn't feel right, don't ignore it. That uncomfortable feeling in your gut might be the only thing standing between someone and tragedy. Sarah's story could have ended very differently if neighbors hadn't been paying attention. Sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who look completely normal, who blend into everyday life until they decide to reveal their true nature. And sometimes, the only thing that stops them is ordinary people who refuse to mind their own business when someone's life is at stake. The street is quiet again. Sarah is gone, but her porch light still flickers on every evening like a memory. I water my roses and watch the world with sharper eyes now. That was the end of Sarah's story. But it could have ended very differently. Always trust your instincts. If you felt something during this story, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more true horror stories.